On NFL Trade Deadline Day, a look back at some of the biggest moves. Here are some of the biggest NFL trade deadline deals. Herschel Walker traded to the Vikings 1989. It was a risky move to ship off the team's best offensive player, but head coach Jimmy Johnson saw a window of opportunity during his Dallas team's downward spiral. At 0-5, the Cowboys were going nowhere, so Johnson unloaded Walker's contract on the Vikings along with some draft picks, and received 5 veteran players and 8 new draft picks from Minnesota. 18 players, including draft picks, were involved in the transaction. In the short term, it was a good investment for the Vikings, as Walker helped them into the playoffs in 1989 by carrying for 669 yards and scoring 5 touchdowns in 11 games. They missed the postseason the next 2 years, and Walker's productivity dropped, so they sent him off, and the blockbuster deal ended rather disappointingly, at least for many. The Cowboys, on the other hand, found themselves with a lot more wiggle room on the draft boards, and Minnesota's picks helped Johnson land players like Emmitt Smith and Darren Woodson. Dallas won 3 Super Bowls from 1992 to 1995 in the aftermath of the Walker trade. Eric Dickerson traded to the Colts 1987, after 4 years running for more than 1,200 yards per season in Los Angeles. Dickerson was expecting a generous payday. The Rams weren't yet willing to grant him that privilege, so Dickerson chose to give them the cold shoulder. In 3 games in 1987, he rushed for just 277 yards and 1 touchdown, and the Rams decided they had seen enough. In a complex 3-team trade, they sent him to the Indianapolis Colts, who had gone just 12-36 in the 3 seasons since moving from Baltimore. Dickerson's impact on the Colts was felt almost immediately. Indianapolis was 6-3 after the trade, en route to a 9-6 finish and an AFC East title. Carson Palmer traded to the Raiders 2011. It took 7 long seasons for Palmer to realize that he really didn't like playing for the Bengals. Palmer openly said he would rather retire than continue to play for them, and Cincinnati owner Mike Brown was perfectly happy with letting that come to pass. After essentially quitting the team, Palmer watched backup QB Andy Dalton lead the Bengals to a 4-2 start. When Oakland Raiders quarterback Jason Campbell broke his collarbone, Brown saw it as his chance to get rid of the problematic Palmer. In desperate need of a replacement, the Raiders were happy to snatch up Palmer, but he recorded just 8 wins in 2 seasons with Oakland. The Bengals came out on top in this one. They were happy to be free of Palmer, and they received a 2012 first-round pick, 17th overall, Dre Kirkpatrick, and a 2013 second-round pick, 37th overall, Giovanni Bernard. In exchange, 3 starting quarterbacks make moves. 1974. This flood of deadline maneuvers in 1974 has not been replicated since. 3 starting quarterbacks, Craig Morton, Norm Snead and John Heddle, were all on the move. Morton went from the Cowboys to the Giants, and finished the season with a 1-6 record. He lasted just 2 more unsuccessful years in New York before moving to Denver, where he enjoyed rejuvenation in his career. Snead was at the tail end of his career when he was sent from the Giants to the 49ers. He would eventually return to New York in 1976 to close out his tenure as an NFL quarterback. Perhaps the most memorable of the 3 trades was Heddle's departure for Green Bay. The Packers were sitting at 3-3 and in dire need of a starting quarterback, so they gave up first, second and third round picks in 1975 and a number 1 and number 2 pick the following year. ESPN hails it as one of the NFL's worst trades. Heddle finished the season with 3 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, and the Packers went 3-5 after the move. He spent 1 more dismal season in Green Bay before finishing off the final 2 years of his career in Houston. Keenan McCardle traded to the Chargers 2004. In 2002, his 670 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns helped the Bucs to their first Super Bowl in franchise history, and the following year he was the team's leading receiver. This made the deal to send him to San Diego big news in the NFL. The Chargers were receiving a former Pro Bowler with Super Bowl experience, and they were only coughing up a 3rd round and a 6th round pick. It seemed like a good deal on paper. But McCardle was nearing the twilight of his career. He had just 10 receiving touchdowns and 3 mediocre seasons with the Chargers before being sent to Washington for his last season in the league. Jerry Rice traded to the Seahawks 2004. McCardle's move may have been the most impactful at the 2004 deadline. But Hall of Fame wide receiver Jerry Rice, though far past his prime, was the biggest name to change hands. His movement from Oakland to Seattle was more Rice's doing, as he wanted to play for a team that would give him more touches. Returning to work with Mike Holmgren was a logical choice. Rice managed to end his career on a high note with 362 yards and 3 touchdowns in 9 starts for the Seahawks. Roy Williams traded to the Cowboys 2008, a highly regarded young receiver and a Pro Bowler in 2006. Williams compiled 3,884 yards and 29 touchdowns in 5 years with Detroit. The Cowboys gave up 3 draft picks, including a first-rounder, for Williams, but he couldn't maintain those impressive numbers in Dallas. Over 3 years, he averaged 33.1 yards per game compared to 64.7 in Detroit. AQYB Talib traded to the Patriots 2012. This represented the first big move after the NFL changed the trade deadline, and it belonged to Bill Belichick. The Patriots were looking for some support in the secondary, which Talib had proven he could provide in 4+ productive seasons with the Bucs. He had 5 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries in 2 seasons with the Patriots, though the team failed to make it to the Super Bowl either year. Now he's a key part of a Denver Broncos team that has started the season 7-0.